Today is February 19th, 2016, and it's the last day of my 4-year, almost 5-year long ownership of this wonderful TB-20 Socata Trinidad 1995 model. It's a bittersweet moment. I'm excited about the new aircraft and 836 Bonanza, but I am really going to miss this Trinidad. I'm not new to aircraft ownership. This is my 3rd airplane. My Bonanza will be my 4th, but this is by far my favorite, and I'm really going to be sad seeing her go. Hopefully it'll go to a good home. This is a very interesting airplane. It started its life in 1995 as part of the Israeli Air Force, as part of 25 airplanes or so that Israeli Air Force bought from Socata. It flew there as a transportation airplane for VIPs and senior officials for 10 years. Then it was brought back in the United States, repainted in a civilian scheme, and entered into a service under the 356 Tango Bravo tail number. It is extremely well equipped, and maybe that contributes to why I like it so much and I'm going to miss it so much. It's just not your ordinary Trinidad. The Israeli has equipped it with standard Keith air conditioning. They have doubled a lot of the avionics in the instrument panel, installed dual oil coolers, Beefier landing gear system with better relays. Overall, just a military version of a civilian airplane. I thoroughly enjoyed owning her over the last 4.5 years. They really never let me stranded. I've transversed the country with her several times, flew all kinds of weather, flew in some really inadvertently, unfortunately, flew into some icing conditions, and the airplane has performed flawlessly. I've also obtained my instrument and commercial ratings in this aircraft, so that's maybe another reason why I'm going to miss her so much. It is a docile, very forgiving, very just stable aircraft. It really has no bad tendencies, no bad habits. It does everything that the pilot expects of it, and it's extremely well built. The French have done an outstanding job with engineering and building this airplane. It's fully zinchromated inside. It's built almost like a commercial airplane, not a general aviation airplane when you kind of delve into the details. I really haven't had to do a lot with it as far as maintenance over the last 4 years. I should rephrase it. I've done a lot of maintenance, but there was not a lot of unpredictable repair type of maintenance. I'll just draw your attention to some of the things that I've done. The big one was installing these Teflon hinges here in the back. These greatly improved the lack of play, if you will, in the anti-hairflow trim tab. And then earlier versions like this one didn't come with it. This was about $3,000–4,000 job. Had some problems with the autopilot, air conditioning, you know, some issues that are not really relegated to the airplane per se. They're more of just mechanical things that need to be serviced. So they're not function of the design or a feature of the airplane. Let's take a look at avionics. Really enjoy this cockpit. I mean, you sit like in a sports car, you've got excellent visibility. These huge windows, these gull-wing doors really allow you to enter and exit the airplane very comfortably. This airplane is certificated for 3 people in the back here. So you can, this was one of the reasons actually I bought it, because I have three children. And believe it or not, we all travel as a family with my 3 kids sitting in the back here with their seatbelts and shoulder harnesses. A little bit going back into the avionics, you see the Israelis have doubled up some of the instruments. There's a backup attitude indicator, electric one on the right hand side, the co-pilot side. You've got Garmin GNS 480, which by the way I'm a huge fan of. I think it's one of the best GPSs out there. Apollo or Garmin MX20 MFD up on top, KFC 150 autopilot. You know, the standard King package basically. Like I said, I had issues with an autopilot, not related to the airplane, but just because The autopilot basically was defective. I had to replace the entire computer, so it was an expensive repair, but it has nothing to do with aircraft per se. The Keith air conditioning that is standard on this airplane, you can kind of see the controls over there by the gear lever. Works extremely well once I got it all sorted out. It's basically needed to be fixed because the motor that's in the aft compartment was not working properly. So there was an extensive, I won't call it repair, but just overhaul, if you will. Once I get all that sorted out, this works great. This airplane has a lot of windows, a lot of glass, so I wouldn't own it, especially in warmer climates, without having air conditioning, because it just acts like a sauna, you know. It traps all the solar energy and you really feel like under the canopy. So that was a great features, and again, I would not own it. Flying characteristics, really docile. You cannot do anything stupid with this airplane almost. There's some maneuvers like the falling leaf, you can read about it, where you fully stall it and keep on the stall, and the airplane just buffets and kind of falls like a leaf gently. Doesn't drop the wing, doesn't do any crazy things that you see. I mean, you see the amount of dihedral, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a huge amount of dihedral in the wings here. The wings are of a kind of almost like a Hershey bar, like a good old Piper design. So trade-offs, maybe some speed, but you gain tons of stability. Again, through this in IFR, high IFR, extremely stable, predictable aircraft. Speed-wise, not the fastest airplane, but you see how roomy the cabin is. So you trade off a little bit of the speed, but I am getting consistently 145 knots by 65% power. So that's not a bad result with the airplane, burning 13 gallons per hour. So with this kind of a fuel burn, you really cannot complain, going just a little slow, but gaining all that width and roominess in the cabin. And again, I really enjoy this kind of sports car, you know, cockpit and ergonomics. It looks like a sports car from the European sports car from the 80s a little bit. Let's see what else I can tell you about it. Some things that needed to be addressed. For whatever reason, I had to rebuild this nose strut twice. It was dripping. Maybe I was jumping the gun, but I really tried to over-maintain this airplane. I mean, I take my family in it, and I just basically spared no expense when it comes to maintenance. Other than that, I had to rebuild one of the landing actuators. Again, it was just dripping just ever so slightly, but I, you know, jumped the gun, I guess, and I had it all overhauled. Other than that, the things that I mentioned, the autopilot and the air conditioning probably were the two things that needed to be addressed, and the autopilot and air conditioning actually did not work from when I bought the airplane, so it was really my fault of not taking the due diligence and inspecting the airplane, and probably some of the dishonesty of the guy that sold it to me didn't really explain to me that those things were not working because they weren't. So lesson learned is do a good pre-purchase inspection and check all the airplane systems before you pay the money, and don't, unfortunately, there's some people are not as trustworthy as you think. Lesson learned for the future. But anyway, everything's sorted out. The airplane's been flawless and easy to work on. That's just my mechanic speaking. Obviously, I don't work on it myself. I'm not an AMP, but easy to access. The belly drops, and you can access all of the systems from underneath it. You can see these little compartments here, so you can get into behind the panel. This comes off. You can get on top of the engine. Batteries over there. These panels tilt, so you take those screws and these panels tilt so you can get behind the instrument panel. So there's a lot of serviceability built into these Socata Trinidads. The only thing you got to keep in mind, again, no, not only, but they're one of the things you keep in mind, all metric hardware. It's a European airplane, so you got to get yourself a metric screw kit. Don't try to put US hardware in it, you're gonna break things. So, you know, it was a project where I bought myself a whole kit from Muncie Aviation here by my house, and they gave me all the different screws that this airplane needed. Parts and service from Socata is outstanding. You think, okay, European company, airplane no longer in production, it would be a nightmare. On the contrary, all this stuff is available on socata.org website, meaning maintenance manuals, parts catalog, annual inspection stuff. From, you know, I own a Piper, I know Grumman. I would say Grumman was pretty good, but the Piper, not so good. And comparing to what I'm getting into the beach, I would say this is by far the best documented airplane, the Socata, even though it's not made in this country and it's not even in production anymore. You got free maintenance manual, free parts catalogs, all available on the website for you, and the part costs are, with some exceptions, pretty reasonable. I mean, not any different than an American aircraft. To summarize, I'm basically just making this video for myself, just so I can remember this airplane years from now, because I have so many fond memories, seeing my kids flying with me and kind of growing up with this airplane. It's part of the family after all. And for any of you guys that are considering this airplane, there's not a lot of information about the Trinidads, and I feel like maybe they still carry a little bit of the undeserved bad reputation only from the standpoint